I remember the guys we hugged, the ones we talked with, had breakfast together at the front, hid together in dugouts under shelling. I honestly do not know if it is even possible to offer some comfort to a mother who has tragically lost her only son. Maybe the goal is just to do something small so that these people can feel some sense of relief. I put on these decorations, awards and medals for the first time specifically for this filming, and maybe after this, I'll probably just take them off this jacket and they'll go back to lying in my closet again. Because back when I was a civilian and was gradually receiving all these awards, starting from 2017, I decided for myself that I would only wear them if I became a soldier again, and only on military clothing. But the most important thing about these awards is that they remind me of the people they are connected with. I remember the guys we hugged, the ones we talked with, had breakfast together at the front, hid together in dugouts under shelling, rejoiced together, and even cried together. That's why these awards, they're really about people. Once, on a summer evening, I got a call from the commander of one of the well-known units. This is a man who has endured the depths of hell, who courageously led his entire military unit out of a deadly encirclement, and who is now deeply respected by everyone in his unit. This was already during the full-scale invasion, it was already summer, and he told me, I'm scrolling through my phone book right now, when he says, already, roughly 30% of the names on this list, they are already fallen from my battalion. But he says, I can't delete them from my phone book. I have a young nephew, or rather, I once had a dear one. He was from Kharkiv. He, from the very first days of the full-scale invasion, joined the volunteer movement and helped in every way he could, mostly helping civilians. He and his team evacuated about 17,000 people from under shelling, from the combat zone. And during one of the evacuations, he was killed. He left behind a wife, a son, and his mother, a cousin. He left behind family. And for me, this is such a personal loss. For me, this is the price of this war. And while having a conversation with his mother, I can see how this deep, agonizing pain within her simply does not subside. This constant pain does not let her go. She must live with it every single day. And I don't even know how I can help her. I honestly do not know if it is even possible to offer some comfort to a mother who has tragically lost her only son. How can you truly help a grieving wife who has suddenly lost her husband, or perhaps a young son who has lost his beloved father? I honestly don't even know if it is possible. Maybe the goal is just to do something small so that these people can feel some sense of relief. Once I was visiting a religious community at a church, and they invited me. Yes, they gave me the floor, They said, "You, as a person connected to the military, I am involved in military chaplaincy," and they asked me, "Say something to our community, greet us." And just a few hours before that, I received a message that the 23-year-old guy was on the verge of life and death, that he was very seriously wounded, and even the fact that he turned out to be wounded and not killed. That is a miracle from God, because you can imagine they are lying there. There were many dead people lying there. And then, suddenly, one of these seemingly dead men stands up and slowly walks over to the medics with a jagged piece of metal sticking out of his head. And by some incredible miracle, he actually turned out to be alive. I told this remarkable story about that guy, and immediately after that, I got down on my knees in disbelief. And I just broke down. I was sobbing. I was just crying out. I very rarely can recall praying like that for someone, even for myself. But at that moment, I wasn't thinking about anything else. I just wanted him to stay alive, for God to save him. He spent several days in intensive care. He was in very serious condition, but today he is alive, he is married. It's truly a miracle. But at 23 years old, he's disabled for life, 23 years old. A person who was simply forced to go and defend others. From time to time, I visit the cemetery, and I have a friend there. He fought for 10 years. He was a very serious special forces operative. And so, practically every single time that I go over to see him, I always make sure to buy him a nice cup of coffee. I take a lot of sugar because he liked his coffee really sweet. And so I bring it to his grave. He smiles warmly from the photo, looking like such a brave and confident officer. And I just stand there completely and awkwardly. And then remember how we used to drink coffee together. I remember how we visited one family. We were on a trip with my friends, the chaplains. We went for a few weeks to visit the military units. And we were originally supposed to stop by a local family that was generously taking care of an entire small town who provided humanitarian aid to almost the entire city, Kupiansk. It was the pastor of the church, his wife, his 3 children. But a few days before our visit to him, he died. A crow flew into the church and he died. We arrived a few days later. We took part in the burial, accompanied him on his final journey. We spent a few more days with this family. The next day we were supposed to leave, but as always, in the evening we sat holding hands and prayed. And then we felt the shells landing closer and closer. I was holding his daughter's hand, and I could feel her pulse. It was getting faster. And it was such an incredibly peculiar and unsettling feeling. And I sit there thinking, it feels so remarkably strange. Why don't they keep sitting, realizing that something significant is steadily approaching us right now? The shelling is coming here, landing closer and closer to us, and no one gets up. No one moves to a safe place. And then when it hit literally right next to us, shattering all the windows around us. That's when the girl's mother, the hostess, screamed, "Everyone, into the corridor." We all ran into the corridor, lay down on the ground, on the floor, just lying there. And the shelling, basically we could feel all the impacts, everything was happening around us. Then there was a short pause. We rushed out to check if everything was intact, the cars, all our things were safe. Something is burning somewhere over there. Well, at least our cars aren't on fire, that's good. Then something else happens again. We hear something flying in, so we run back inside again. We did this a couple of times. And you know, during that terrifying time, I was silently praying, especially when we were just lying there helplessly on the cold floor. I was praying with all my heart, and I suddenly realized that this might actually be my very last prayer in this life. When we felt that there had been serious explosions near our house, there was another pause. We ran outside and saw that the neighboring houses were destroyed. People lived there, and unfortunately, they died. And there is that profound, overwhelming feeling when you pray deeply and sincerely, fully understanding in your heart that now you truly have no other choice but to rely on Him, to pray, because this might be your last prayer in life. It's a strange feeling, and it is truly unforgettable. After this specific incident occurred, and by the way, it was already my 10th year visiting the military, serving as a dedicated chaplain for the soldiers. Perhaps this was already the very serious final straw for me. In my fragile mental state, after all of this, I just wanted to be completely alone for a long while. So I left. I bought an old Soviet motorcycle with the sole purpose of completely disassembling it, repainting it entirely, and putting it back together. That's what I came up with for myself. And for almost a whole month, I spent several hours a day in the garage. For me, it was a kind of therapy. At that moment, maybe I realized that I was a bit tired. Perhaps in that very specific moment, I truly felt that I desperately wanted to recover and that I absolutely needed to completely rejuvenate my very soul.